Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today we will be doing my April TBR using not only my TBR game but the prompts for the magical Orilium Readathon. Alright, it is that time of month where we do my favorite yet somehow most stressful video of the month, and that is to select the books that I will be reading next month. And next month we have a couple things going on. I will be a guest host for a book club, which I will talk about when I talk about that book, and I will be taking part in the spring equinox round of the magical Orilium here in April. That does go from April 1st to April 30th. I will go ahead and post the announcement down below for that if you wish to take part. I believe this is either my second or third year taking a part in this readathon. I don't go into it as hardcore as other people do. We can technically have characters and guilds and side quests, and I don't really do those. I just take part in the spring and autumn equinox, and I take my classes during that time to become both a necromancer and a beastmaster. Now I will be going through all the books that I'm hoping to read for this readathon. I will say I don't limit myself to the month of April for this because I do have so many books that I have to read because I chose two careers. I'm pretty loosey-goosey when it comes to this readathon. It's just a lot of fun for me, and I love having additional prompts. This readathon is of course hosted by the wonderful Booklovers, and like I mentioned, that will go ahead and be linked down below, so if you're not already following her, make sure you go ahead and do so. On top of that readathon, I will of course be playing my wonderful TBR game, Leser and Egg Editionist, which is pretty much the English version of Parcheesi. As always, I will go ahead and have my playlist linked up above that has both an instruction video on how I play this, what my rules are, as well as past rounds of this game. We will also be going ahead and selecting another book from my challenge cup. Before we get into all of that fun, we need to go ahead and see how I did on my February TBR to see if I need to start out with a punishment or if I get to start out with a reward. I'm gonna be totally honest, February was a really hard month for me. I went into a pretty big reading slump after a very intense readathon that I took a part in January, and then I also had some mental health as well as physical health issues, and that definitely reflects here on my TBR because I did not complete, I would say, most of the books that I put on this list. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna be looking down at my computer while I go through this because I don't actually physically own any of these books. I went ahead and got KU in the month of February. Did I get the most use out of it? No. That being said, role number 1 was going to be a romance that was written by a queer author, and I went ahead and selected With a Vengeance, and I did actually read this book, so that's one of the few books that I did read. Up next, we had a horror thriller mystery, which was to have a disabled main character. For this, I went ahead and selected It's Witchcraft. While I have since read that book, I did not read it until the beginning of March, so I technically did not read it in the month of February. Role number 3 was a sci-fi, and it was to be written by one of my new favorite authors of 2023, and I went ahead and selected Straight by Chuck Tingle, and I did actually read this one. Next, we had a historical, which was to be written by an Asian author, and I selected The Girl Who Kept Winter, and I did not read this. Next was a romance novel that was to be adult, and I read Pucking Around, and I did read all 700 pages of this, and it's probably one of the reasons I didn't read much else because I was reading this chunker. Next, we got fantasy, a color wheel, and we landed on blue. I selected The Deep, and I did start this. I read the first 25%, then I lost my hold on it and I was not able to complete it. I will say I do have it on my Libby once again. My hold came in and I'm hoping to finish it soon, but obviously I did not read more than 50% of it in the month of February, so that counts as not completing it. it. Next we got fantasy with a person on the cover, and I chose Sweet Vengeance for this and did not read it. And next we had another fantasy, and this one was to include travel, and I chose Balance of the Fates, and I read, I want to say like 11% of it, and then I decided to temporarily DNF it because of my reading slump. It just really wasn't what I needed at the time, but I didn't get 50% through, and it's not like a permanent DNF, so I'm gonna go ahead and count it as a fail. So we are definitely going to go ahead and start off with a punishment prompt. So let's go ahead and head over to Natalie by the game board to pull that punishment prompt, as well as doing role number 1. All right, guys, here we are with our board. We have quite a few players out, and I am definitely going to try and not knock anybody out, because considering all of the prompts that I have for Orilium, I definitely don't want to risk not being able to double up on that and just having like a ton of books to read. But that being said, we do need to go ahead and start with our punishment prompts. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle that. I do have most of my punishments in here, so we really could get just about anything, and I am definitely nervous. So let's go ahead and see what this one on top is. 10 lowest rated on Goodreads. So I'll have to choose one of the 10 lowest books that are on Goodreads. I obviously do not select any books that don't have any ratings yet. Right, and let's go ahead and get into role number 1 out of 5. Looks like we're starting with a contemporary. And we got a 5 for that. And just a reminder that if we roll a 5 or a 6, we do take someone out of the house. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, I should have just like kept my mouth shut there at the beginning when I said I didn't want to knock anyone out. That would have been a smart move on my part. But let's go ahead and see. We need a contemporary with plants on the cover. All right, guys, so starting off with the punishment prompt, we went ahead and got one of the 10 lowest books on Goodreads. I won't show you me scrolling through that, sorry, but you'll just have to trust me that this is the 3rd lowest rated book on my Goodreads account, and that is There Is No Way I'd Die First by Lisa Springer, and this had a 3.24 rating, so that is very low. And this seems to be a debut YA horror story, so you know, she's still working out her writing and everything. Maybe that's why it doesn't have a very high rating on it. I will say that I do take ratings when it comes to Black horror with a grain of salt, just because I know that us white people don't see Black horror the same way that we do white horror, and that can sometimes negatively impact the ratings. Is that the case in this book, or is it just not the best debut? I'm not sure, but we seem to be following a girl who is a huge fan of horror movies. She knows all the tropes, she knows all the mistakes that the characters make that gets them killed, and she actually started a club revolving around horror movies, and all the cool kids in her school seem to want to join, including a guy I believe she has a crush on, who seems to be like a musician of sorts, and she's just feeling on top of the world, and she ends up hosting kind of a party where she invites a clown who is supposed to be, you know, kind of scary, but you know, still just chill. But he actually ends up being like an axe murderer, and she and the other kids at the party need to survive this killer clown. So that sounds very intriguing. I will say I don't really have a fear of clowns. I've never really interacted with clowns that much. I mean, I don't like them, but if I saw a clown, I probably wouldn't run in the other direction unless he's holding an axe. Then I would run in the other direction very, very quickly. And I will go ahead and listen to this one as an audiobook. And for role number 1, we got a contemporary that is to have plants on the cover. A lot of my contemporary like romances didn't have any flowers on the cover, which was very annoying. However, this book that is on my spring TBR, which I was definitely trying to get to some of those books, does have flowers on the cover, and that is Bloom by Delilah Dawson. This, I would say, is a contemporary horror. It is sapphic horror, in which we are following a woman who never really saw herself as being queer until one day she meets a woman who works at the local farmers market, and she just instantly becomes infatuated with her, and it seems that her love for this woman is blinding her to some weird things that may be happening, and towards the end of the book things escalate and get a little crazy. This book is super duper short. I have heard really good things about it, so considering how many books I'm gonna have on this TBR, I'm really excited to be getting one that is this tiny, but I'm also really excited to see what the hype is around this book. Plus, it is a stunning cover. Like I said, plants on the cover, plenty of flowers. Right, moving on to roll 2 out of 6 now. We're getting a historical. We got a 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't take someone out because he would knock out one of his own players, which obviously they can't do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go ahead and take this guy. And we need a historical book that was published before 1995. All right, roll number 2, we ended up getting a historical, and that was to be published before 1995. And I decided to go ahead and check out my historical romances because I know I have some on there that are older. And luckily I did have one that was apparently written in around 1990, and that is The Gentle Rogue by Joanna Lindsay. This is a historical romance that I heard some people talking very positively about when I first started watching BookTube here in maybe like 2020, and also this cover was so stunning, and when I came across it at Value Village, I snatched it up, and now I finally get the opportunity to read it. I will say last year I read another historical romance that was written back in the 1990s, and it definitely had some problematic aspects to it. It definitely isn't a modern day romance where women have rights and consent is just the sexiest thing. But I am hoping that this book is a well written, just because I have heard such good things about it. I have to admit, I have no idea what it's about anymore. It says her heart trampled and torn, innocent Georgina Anderson was desperate to return home to America, leaving her sorrows on England's shores. She defiantly boards the gentleman ship Maiden and disguised as a cabin boy, never dreaming she'd be forced into intimate servitude to the irresponsible rake, Captain James Mallory. A handsome ex-pirate, the black sheep of a proud and tempestuous family, Mallory swore no woman alive would entice him into matrimony. But on the high seas, he would be bested by a high-spirited beauty whose love of freedom and adventure rivals his own, by an inescapable tidal wave of passion that threatens to engulf them both. So we will see how it goes. I am excited. It is a little bit on the chunkier side, but I think it's less than 400 pages. It just looks chunky because it's a mass paperback. Moving on to roll 3 out of 6. Woo, way over there, but it is a sci-fi, and that is a 3. So we want to go ahead and move this guy 1, 2, 3, and that is Saved on Instagram. All right, for roll number 3, we ended up getting a sci-fi, and this is a book that is to be saved on Instagram. So every once in a while I will save books to my Instagram page instead of adding them to my TBR, or sometimes if people give like large groups of recommendations, I will put them on there. And in this case, I went ahead and took a picture of the page that inspired what I chose, and this person was giving recommendations to books that included autism representation. And the book I will be selecting is The Spirit Bears Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. This is the book that is going to be for the book club. Shelf This Book book club by Is Bailey Reading is the book club that I will be co-hosting or a guest host on this month in April, and I have selected this book. I will go ahead and leave her announcement video down below. If you go into the description of that video, there is a Discord channel that you can join and we can talk about this book together. I probably won't read it till the second half of the month, just to make sure that it's still fresh in my mind when we go to the live show. But I have read a book by this author before. I read their I want to say it was a debut novel. Hell Followed With Us, and really quite enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 4.5 star. They write YA horror stories that have a sci-fi aspect to it. In this book, we are following a young trans boy who has violet eyes, and this means that they are able to commune with the spirits. This young boy obviously has no interest in being married and being a wife, but one day their family goes ahead and forces them into a marriage that they try to escape. As punishment for trying to escape this marriage, they send them to a boarding/sanitarium for misbehaving girls, or girls that are sick. And when they show up there, they start to see some of the ghosts of the girls that were there and disappeared, and realize that girls are dying there and they need to take steps to save the girls that are there and burn this school to the ground, hopefully. So I really enjoyed this author's depiction of body horror last time, and how they intertwined that type of horror with the trans experience. So I think that this will be a really interesting book to read and discuss. I would love to discuss it with you guys, so make sure you go ahead and check out Is Bailey Reading's channel and join that Discord and join us for the live show whenever that happens. All right, roll 4 out of 6. Another contemporary, and another 5, but everyone is out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Absolutely not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go ahead and move this guy. And that is going to be a queer contemporary novel. All right, guys. So for roll number 4, we got another contemporary, and this one was to have LGBTQ plus characters in it. And I have gone ahead and selected episode 7 of Criminal Intentions, Cult of Personality by Cole McCade. As you can see, I do now have these books physically, or at least this one book physically, and I will start collecting them physically moving forward. They are available on KU, but I just get KU so infrequently, and I do not want to wait on continuing this series because I'm having such a wonderful time with it. In this series, we are following Malcolm and Sanjay, and they are both detectives for the Baltimore Police Department. In each book, which each one is relatively short, we are following them as they solve a different homicide or a different crime, but in the background we see a larger threat looming, if not multiple threats looming. It is also a very slow burn romance between Sanjay and Malcolm. There's quite a bit of representation in here. Malcolm is Jewish and Iranian, and I believe he is bisexual. I would definitely either say bisexual or pansexual. And then Sanjay, on the other hand, is demisexual. He is Korean, and he is also autistic. I've been having a wonderful time with the series. I am not quite sure what will happen in this one. I go into them relatively blind, which works perfectly fine for me, but I just know that I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this book. Roll number 5 out of 6. Another sci-fi. Another 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Takes place outside of the US, which, you know, outer space counts. All right, so for roll number 5, we have a sci-fi that is to take place outside of the US. And yes, I chose a book that is taking place in outer space, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I am reading this book this month, okay? This book has been on so many lists. I've been trying to prioritize this book so often, and I just haven't read it yet. It is the last book on my list of 5 books that I think will be 5 stars, and I'm pretty sure I made that list sometime back in like the summer of 23. So it's been over half a year for me to read 5 books that I think will be 5 stars, so I should be prioritizing them. But in this book, we are following a man. He wakes up and he doesn't know where he is. I don't even think he really knows who he is. And he kind of realizes that he has been tasked with saving the world. And we follow him as he tries to accomplish this task, and along the way he seems to find a little sidekick. I never know if it's a little robot or a little alien, but either way people seem to really love it. I feel like more people enjoy this book than The Martian, and I gave The Martian 4.5 stars, so I am very optimistic that I'm going to enjoy this read, and I'm very excited that I'm finally getting it on a solid TBR, and I'm going to prioritize it if I do not finish this book. You have my permission to fill my YouTube comments with little emoji frowny faces. And what is hopefully our last roll, 6 out of 6. A horror thriller mystery. A 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and this, let me see if I can flip that. 3 or more colors on the cover. All right, and we made it to our final roll, and that was going to be a horror thriller mystery, and that was to have 3 or more colors on it. This is not the most colorful cover, but there's technically more than 3 colors on it, and that is the Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I do have my hold available now on Libby to read it, so I definitely want to try and get to it soon. I do have a couple other audiobooks that I need to get to first, which is why I'm putting it on my April TBR, because I don't think I'll be able to squeeze it in this month. But this is one of the 6 books that I put on my 2024 bingo board of a new release that came out this year that I would like to read. I did read Crystal Sutherland's other book, The House of Hollow, last year, and I believe it made it into either my honorable mentions or actually my top 10 books of the year. I really did enjoy it, and I'm excited to check out her new book. This book seems to follow multiple characters, one of which might be possessed by a demon. I haven't read the synopsis for a while, but I believe one of the girls is trying to figure out what happened to her sister. She seems to suspect maybe like witchcraft of sorts. There is also a serial killer in the area, but she is not willing to admit the fact that her sister might have just been another victim of a cold-blooded killer. So I'm very excited to see how this goes. I have to admit I haven't really heard too much about it yet, but we will see what I think. All right, guys, before we get into the Orilium prompts, I want to go ahead and do my challenge cup. Usually I do this at the end of my TBR since I can't use these books for my TBR game. However, I can use them towards the prompts of a readathon. So I'm gonna pull and see if I can use this to double up with any of my prompts. All right, just a little transparency. I am filming this clip before I do any of my rolls or anything like that. So if this angle or setup is different than the rest of the video, that is why. Just a little summary of how I'm doing on my challenge books. I'll go ahead and link the challenge book video up there just so you can see what I'm doing. In the month of February, I went ahead and pulled this chonker, which is a 1Q84, and I've read 70 pages of it and decided to DNF it. And you can hear more about the reasoning behind that in my mid-month March wrap up when I do that. And then last month I went ahead and selected Beautiful Boy and have not started this yet. And I'm going to be totally honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to start it here in the month of March. It is only the 23rd today, but I still have a 500-page fantasy that I haven't started yet that I need to go ahead and get through. So and if I do have time to start this in March, I definitely won't be finishing it. But let's go ahead and see what other challenge books we can add. That being said, since I DNF'd IQ 84, if I pick Don Quixote by Cervantes, I do have to read it. So just a heads up, because I did technically pick Don Quixote last month, but because I was working on this chonker, I allowed myself to repull. That would not be the case this month. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen. All right, so we're just mixing. Hopefully Don Quixote is down there at the bottom somewhere where I won't grab it. All right, let's grab this guy. I'm nervous and I feel like I always do this the wrong way. So what does that say? The Heart's Invisible Furies. So this book is a little bit longer, but at least I own it. All right, guys, so only 2 out of the 10 books on this challenge list are books that I physically own. I have to admit, I am glad that I'm pulling one of the books that I own because I don't have to worry about, you know, my holds at the library taking forever or me having overdue books because it's taking me forever to get through these challenge books. So I can take my time with this book, technically, but this is a historical fiction. I believe it is queer and that we are following a young man in in Ireland, not Scotland. We're following a young man in Ireland, and I believe we're following him throughout his entire life. He is an orphan and was adopted by a family that always made sure that he knew he was adopted, but he kind of finds comfort in a friendship with another boy, and I'm assuming we just follow a man throughout history as he kind of grapples with his sexuality and his place in the world and all that jazz. This book is almost 600 pages. It seems like we're in the 670s here, and it's a historical fiction, which is not a genre I read very often, so definitely very intimidated by it, but it is a book that I purchased because I was really intrigued by it, so I'm glad that I'm being pushed to actually pick it up. And let's see if we can get it onto one of my Orilium prompts. All right, guys, now that we have gone through the books that are on my TBR from my TBR game, as well as selected my challenge book, let's go ahead and go into the prompts for the Orilium Readathon. Like I said, I am doing both necromancy as well as beastmaster. I will allow myself to double up on the classes that both careers require. That being said, this is still going to be 10 prompts that I need to fulfill. I obviously allowed myself to double up with my TBR game reads as much as possible. Starting at the first class, we have Shapeshifting, and this was to select a author based off of who was quoted on your last 5-star read, and then read a book by the person who the quote was by. And I actually had to go to my 4th last 4-star because 2 of my last 5-star reads were indie published, so there wasn't actually anyone quoted on the book. And then the other one was going to be volume 8 of Heaven Official Blessing, which also didn't have anyone quoted on it. However, before that, I went ahead and reread Iron Widow and gave it 5 stars again. And on the back it says, like its ferocious heroine, Iron Widow is brutal, bloodthirsty, and full of rage. Zatan's fight to shatter patriarchal definitions of power makes for a truly thrilling read by Julie C. Dow, author of Forest of 1,000 Lanterns. Now, The Forest of 1,000 Lanterns is actually a book that I did have on my TBR, so that worked out nicely. I went ahead and got the audiobook for this. I will say I can definitely see why this author was asked for a quote for Iron Widow. The books seem to have slightly similar themes. Forest of 1,000 Lanterns, I believe, was written back in 2017, so it is a little bit older, and it seems to be based off of a tale known as The Evil Queen. It is, once again, an East Asian inspired fantasy, and we are following a young woman who grew up in poverty, but was told that she was destined to be queen of the land as long as she allows herself to be corrupted by dark magic and to betray the man she loves. I believe this is a YA story, so I'm assuming it's going to be a really angsty. I do enjoy a villain origin story. I'm not sure if that's what this is going to be, or if it is going to be kind of someone turning their back on their evil destiny. It is just a duology, so if I do enjoy it, at least I'm not starting another long series, but I am interested to go ahead and check out this audiobook. Up next, we have Animal Studies, and this is to read a book with a yellow title. I am cheating a little bit on this because I am selecting Project Hail Mary, which if you're looking at this, you're like, are you colorblind? Because that is white. And I'm like, yes, it is. But if we look this way, right, yes. If we look this way, the title on the spine is in fact yellow. So I'm taking it. A win is a win, and I really need to go ahead and read this book, and I want to double up as much as possible. So this is the one I will be choosing for animal studies. So up next we have Inscription, and this was pretty much to write down 3 titles and randomly select one. So I went ahead and used my little demon cup for this, and I have 3 in here that were on my TBR that I wasn't able to double up with. So we have Bloom, we have the Invocations, and we have the There's No Way I Die First, I believe it's called. So let's go ahead and just mix, and then we will go ahead and select one. Either way, I'm going to read any of these, but we'll just see which ones double up. Let's choose this one, and that is going to be the Invocations. Perfect. So that is the one that I will be reading for Inscription. Up next we have Spells and Incantations, and for this we were supposed to randomly generate a number, and then that is the number of letters that is in the title. So I went ahead and did that. I just did 5 through 20. I felt like most titles are probably somewhere within that length, and it was a bit of a struggle to find a book for this, and none of the books from my TBR game worked, unfortunately. However, I did find a book, one that I'm excited for. I'm a little bummed that I can't prioritize it because it's not on my TBR, but if I get to it, hurrah. And that is Angels Before Men by Raphael Nicholas. If you watched my last haul, this is when I hauled this book, and it is absolutely stunning. This is a queer retelling of the fall of Lucifer. Essentially, we're following Lucifer. He's chilling in the garden or wherever angels used to chill, and he's just not super happy with his life. And one day, the strongest angel, Michael, shows up and they form a friendship, and then something more, and God becomes jealous. So I am very interested to see what I think about this book. I found out about this book because someone I follow on Instagram made this their favorite book of the year. So that is making me optimistic that this is going to be a well-written and interesting story. Up next we have Conjuration, and that is to use a random color wheel. So I went ahead and used one of those, and the color I got was called Carnation, which was essentially like a light pink color. So I decided to do something very risky, which is why I wanted to emphasize the fact that I do not need to finish all of the books that are on the Orilium TBR this month, because I am going to put the challenge book on there, Hearts Invisible Furies by John Boyne. And obviously this is very, very chunky, but the color worked very well for it, and we'll try. We really will try, but we're not optimistic. Not even a little bit. Next prompt is going to be Restoration, and this is a book that you think could get you out of a slump. I am going to be choosing The Cult of Personalities. This series has gotten me out of slumps before, so I know for a fact that it is a safe bet that if I were in a slump and I had the opportunity to read this, I would be out of that slump. I would be reading like crazy. So the next prompt that I need to fulfill is lore, and this seems to be on break, and the prompt is technically to reread The Legend of Dia or Dai. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I have never read this before. It seems to be something that Book Roast had written kind of as part of the lore of this readathon. So I'm not really going to be rereading it, but I will go ahead and read it for the first time to fulfill this prompt. Up next we have Demonology, and this is to read a book that you did not pay for. I will be reading A Beautiful Boy by David Sheff. This is my March challenge book that I haven't read yet, and I got it from the library, so I did not pay for it. This book, as far as I know, is essentially just following a father as he deals or grapples with the fact that his son is a drug addict. So it's probably going to be a very difficult and emotional read, but it is definitely one that I'm excited to get to. Second to a last prompt we have is Elemental Studies, and this is to have a source of light on the cover, and I will be choosing Gentle Rogue by Joanna Lindsay for this because there is a moon right there, which is a source of light. And for the final prompt, we are to do alchemy, and that is to have circles on the cover. I will be choosing The Spirit Bears Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White because there are a few eyeballs on this cover which are circles. So I'm very excited to double up on this bad boy. All right, so these are all the physical reads. We also have the Invocations, There's No Way I'd Die First, and Forest of 1,000 Lanterns. So we do have quite a few books here on my TBR. I am definitely a little stressed, just a little bit. We'll see how much time I have to read. I will definitely get started on this as soon as possible. We've got some good variety in here, and I definitely got a lot of books that I was excited to read on here. So I'm very much looking forward to the month of April. I would love to know what books you're hoping to read in April. Are you going to join us for our book club? Are you taking part in the magical Orilium? And what career are you trying to achieve? I, of course, would also love to know if you have read any of these books and what you thought about them. And as always, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!